Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NH Experience. And on today's show, I have a very special guest. She's the host of Listen In with K&N on Fox Sports Radio. Also, she was recognized as the DMV Sports Media Person of the Year. She's hosted a plethora of things. You've seen her on numerous red carpets. I mean, if you haven't seen this woman, I don't know where the hell you've been. But she's definitely a pillar in the community. She's always willing to invest in the youth and make sure that the youth are taken care of with her wisdom and knowledge and her special way of caring for them. Also, she's an instructor at Doro College where she teaches intro to radio to young people and making sure that we continue to carry this legacy on into the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Kelsey Nicole Nelson. What's going on?
Thanks so much for having me. I love that intro. I'm so humbled. So thank you for having me. It's incredible to be on with you. You know, it's crazy. I remember seeing you in LA, and it's crazy now because I'm not hopping on a plane anytime soon, but how's the world changed, right? Since we last saw each other in person.
Absolutely. That's why I had to say your name really slow because I didn't want to get tongue-tied. I'll pay $100 if somebody can say your name fast 3 times without messing it up.
You did perfect. So thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here.
Hey, I'm glad to have you on. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule.
My pleasure.
I want to talk to you a little bit about, obviously, what got you involved in media. You came from the DMV, for those that know, that's D.C., Maryland, and Virginia.
Yes, best place in the entire world.
I don't know about that, but we'll let that ride for right now.
Most powerful city in the world.
It's the West Coast. I'm from the West Coast. I'm from L.A., so I got to represent.
We show y'all love on the East, but you know.
All right, that's all that counts. But what got you involved in media? What made you, as a young lady, as a young Black woman, to say, you know what, I want to get involved in media, and this is the way I want to go about doing it? Or did you just kind of fall into it?
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. Growing up, I was always that inquisitive kid. I always loved media. I was always watching the news with my parents. And, you know, eventually I started looking at my parents, looking at myself and realizing, look, where are the people that look like me? And then if people saw my Father's Day post I did with my dad, I mean, getting into sports media, my dad loves sports. It's the first thing I knew. My family's from down south, right? We play sports. And it's funny, my Father's Day picture my dad has on a Gremlin hat and a Ravens jersey. If you see anybody in the DMV with that, most likely he's my dad because he always repped Gremlin State. He always was repping the Ravens. Like I grew up, you know, in this world of sports and I always loved it. I always loved telling stories. I was competitive, but I always knew I like to tell stories, you know, and I love the impact that media has. I always like being able to reach so many different people. So media for me was just a natural fit. Everyone says I have the gift of gab. I genuinely love talking with people. I love meeting people. So it was just a fit, you know, went to college, got my degree in it. And again, just a natural fit. And I mean, the rest is kind of history, but I wouldn't change it for the world. But because I get to meet new people every day, I get to tell stories. Like that's my job. It doesn't get any better than that, you know, so I'm thankful to be in this position that I'm in today and thankful for my parents for, you know, letting me watch TV with them up late and practice my news reports with them first, you know, so now hopefully I'm more of a perfectionist now.
Absolutely. What made you decide to stay in your backyard, as it were, not venture off to New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, which are bigger markets, obviously? Yeah. What made you want to stay there in the DMV and still cultivate those relationships and develop your own brand there?
You know, there's something special about your hometown. And everyone, like my friends will call me Miss DMV because I'm from here, went to Maryland and Georgetown, which of course are the 2 biggest schools here. So like, if you need to know anything about the DMV, I am your person. I will tell you the best food spots, the best nightclubs, whatever you need to know, come to me. And I mean, the DC area, think about it. I said it earlier. DC is the most powerful city in the entire world. I love growing up here. It's who I am. I mean, so much of me was ingrained here, right? Like for my show, I have a go-go version in my intro. Go-go music is what I grew up with. It's a DC thing, and I love it here. And I always said, if you can make it in your hometown, you can make it anywhere. And think about it. You know your hometown better than anybody. Mm-hmm. I grew up here. I know what the Mystics have went through. So seeing them finally win their first franchise championship. I remember when they were, you know, when they were starting, when they were young. I remember the Coco Miller and Elena Beer days. You know, I remember growing up watching Agent Zero and having my Agent Zero jersey, you know, with the Wizards. It's so much you grow up with, the good old days, you know, with the Ravens and the Washington Redskins. So I get to cover teams that I used to sit in the nosebleed section watching. There's nothing more special than that because it's like when life comes full circle. And that's why for me, it's been so special here. And I said, as long as the DMV will keep me here and help me keep paying my bills and my rent and everything else, I will stay here and continuing, you know, to deliver the fans the stories that they need and the stories that they want and hopefully the stories that they love.
Hey, as long as the check clears, I'm all for that.
Check clears, we're good.
Absolutely. When you look at what's going on, obviously we've been through a lot of things. COVID-19 has changed a lot of dynamic when it comes to media, when it comes to how we approach media now. I mean, we're doing things like this more often than normal, as far as video links and conferences and things of that nature. When you look at the lack of reporting, because we're kind of limited in what we can report, because sports was also put on hold. As well as the entertainment industry. How have you been able to navigate your way through COVID and still keep your name and your brand out there and be able to elevate that as elegant as you do?
You know, I'm a journalist. That means that there's always a story that I need to find. So COVID came, that made me work harder. Now I'm limited. I'm stuck in the house. I have to tell a story. People are hitting me up. Hey, Kelsey, what's next? I'm going to have an answer for them. I'm not one for somebody to ask me something and me not to answer back. So if anything, COVID actually pushed me harder because I thought about it. I said, if I'm stuck in a situation, the people I need to talk to are stuck in a situation too. I rarely take no for an answer. So best believe if I want somebody on my show, if I want to tell a story, I'm going to be persistent and push. And I've been blessed. I have an amazing team around me. They work as hard as me. We do not sleep. We're up all crazy hours of the night and day. PR people have been fabulous. The athletes I've had on my show have been fabulous. And we're just finding different ways to storytell, right? Just because there's not a game doesn't mean there's not a story. I mean, there's always stories around the game. And really, those are kind of what people are interested in. I mean, we see the greatness on the basketball court and on the football field. But how do you get to that point? What are you doing now so you are still great? You know, are you going to go to Orlando? I want to know the storyline. What are you doing to prepare for that? How was your family preparing for that? You know, how has life changed? Because I think if anything now, we can relate more to athletes. You know, there are athletes that are like us that didn't have a gym, using water bottles and anything else to work out. I can relate to that, right? I don't have this big fancy gym. I'm in a tight apartment in DC. So it's those connection pieces that I wanted to see people like, we're just like everybody else. And then I think the current events that are going on around now too, you see just like the rest of us, you know, athletes, when they take off their uniform, hey, they're still like us. They still have melanin in their skin. They still face the same stories and the same things that we go through, the same injustices. So I wanted to bring that to people to show like there's so much more that makes us similar than different. And this is the storylines that I've been trying to feed off of. And then I always tell people at the end of the day, I've always just wanted people to learn something from me and to laugh. Every show, that's my goal. You need to laugh and you need to learn something. So long as I'm doing that, I'm a happy person. And, you know, hopefully people keep watching my show because of that.
Well, it sounds like a good formula. I want to ask you this too. With the rising cases that we're constantly seeing in various states, and we know that the NBA has been trying to work on coming back, the WNBA, obviously Major League Baseball has solidified their comeback, where they're going to end up more than likely either Arizona or Florida, if not both. We know the NBA is headed towards, like you said, Orlando, Florida. The WNBA is going to be there along with the MLS. Should we have sports with all the rising cases that are going on? And you know, we're still learning about different strands of this COVID-19 that people are getting, you know, slammed with.
You know, it's crazy. And Nick, that's the $1 million question. Should we still have sports? For me personally, no. Nothing is greater than human health or human risk, right? These are still people at the end of the day. When you have so many complications, I feel like that's a sign from the man above, like, you don't need to be doing that. When something that's complicated, maybe it shouldn't happen. And look, I get it. We miss sports. I miss sports. This is the most I've ever spent in my apartment. Like for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm actually paying rent for a reason. Because usually I just pay rent here to sleep here because I'm gone. I'm not here. So I think it's like life is coming full circle. But again, you never want to put an athlete's family at risk. And you're hearing that, like such as Trevor Ariza had said. You never want to put an athlete at risk just to bring people sports. We keep seeing these cases popping up. Right now, we don't know how to quarantine well, obviously. That's why the cases keep popping up. Right. And also, people are asymptomatic. We can't detect it. That's scary. So why are we trying to do things to put anybody at risk? I understand it's about the bottom line and about the money, but when does human life become more than $1? And that's the question I've been asking. So this is, for me, again, I know we want it. I want sports back personally, but not at the risk of anybody because it's not worth it. One death from COVID is too much, but to have useless, unnecessary deaths, I don't know about anybody else, but I just couldn't live with that. If I was in that position to make that power, you know, to make that decision.
Yeah, I've said on occasion where I would like to see sports come back, obviously, because we've been deprived of it for so long. This is kind of the first time we've gone through something major where we've been deprived of sports because we've always looked to sports as an escape, as it were, from whatever the problems that we may be facing. And that's gotten us through all of these things. So this is kind of the first time we've actually been, you know, without sports for 4 months plus. And so when you hear about stories about NHL players getting COVID, you hear about, the Joker, you know, getting COVID in a whole nother country. When you look at so many other athletes that are getting COVID or concerned about getting COVID. We know about CJ McCollum raising his awareness about it. There's also, too, not just about COVID, but also about what's been going on in our country as far as, systemic racism and institutionalized racism and oppression, and that people have been standing, protesting, fighting against it in various ways. We've seen various NBA players, even some Major League Baseball players have spoken out about it, stood up on it. And so there's been a lot about Kyrie Irving, talking about, hey, guys have been coming to him saying, look, we don't feel like our voice is going to be heard. It's going to be muted with everybody focusing on basketball. Steven Jackson's come out and said that. So I understand there's two major things that are going on in this country there. The universe is saying, look, maybe not the right time to be playing sports. Maybe we should.
It's a message. It's a message. Yes. It's a message, and we need to answer it. I'm sorry. Look, again, I want sports like you. I know it's been 104 days since any of the major 4 leagues here have played. That's a long time. That's a long time. Yes, I've been counting. But saying all that to say, again, anytime there is risk, where the risk is greater than the reward, we need to ask ourselves a question. Is it worth it? I think right now we're being given a second chance to do things right. I think we're starting to see some change with the racial injustice in this country. Even though it's long overdue, we're starting to see some change slowly but surely. With COVID, I think this is a second chance. I will wear, the only time people won't see me wearing my face mask is like when I'm doing stuff like this, because I'm in my apartment by myself, I'm talking with you. I don't know if I'm asymptomatic. I'm putting it on. I don't want to put anybody else at risk. I don't want to be at risk. I have a family too. So I say all this to say it's become too complicated, right? It's just become too complicated because there's no contingency plan. We see football players getting it. The players are like, hey, you're putting me at risk, but I feel like I have to be here because I have a scholarship. But is that fair? They have families they have to go home to. They have to think about their futures. And again, people are dying from COVID. This is not your common flu, achoo, and it's gone.
Right.
People are dying. They're in hospital beds. There's complications after. Young people now are getting it more. Before, it was more the older population. There's people healthy like me and you, Nick, who are getting it. Again, we have to ask ourselves the question, is it worth it? I say no. I know they're saying, I think Dr. Fauci said he's hopeful by the end of this year that maybe there'll be a cure. Maybe we need to wait for that. I'm not a medical expert, but guess what? The man he knows his stuff. I would rather follow his opinion in terms of safety than us just guessing and putting lives at risk.
No question. I think when you look at the overall totality of it, it's greed. It's about the bottom line, which is it's always been about that.
It's about money, yeah.
Yeah, it's always been about
green talks.
And BS walks.
I like tag team.
Apparently they feel like COVID is BS, but oh well, they'll find out the hard way, as my mom used to tell me when I was young. Yeah. Find out the hard way. Hard head make a soft ass.
It's a good saying, right? It's true.
Pretty much. In this case especially. When we talk about, you were talking about earlier about, dealing with, you have a team and how important that is, obviously having a team around you, but then you have to deal with the outside people, obviously athletes, entertainers, PR people.
Right.
In the climate that we've been in for quite a long time, how important to you is Black media, and what do you see changing with Black media? Because there's been talk. I don't know if you've experienced, but I'm sure you have. Like I've experienced as far as being on red carpets, being positioned in a particular way. That we don't get the content that the majors get, the type of content that they get, or we're not having the opportunity to get those stories and get to those players, where they try to separate us from the players, as it were, sometimes with some of these sports franchises and PR people. And even the agents too, with the athletes, sometimes they get these agents and they kind of block you and be a buffer between you and the next player or the next, entertainer. What are some of the things that you've had to face with Black media, and how important is Black media, period?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. Black media is huge. I mean, in college, I got my degree in broadcast journalism and African-American studies, specifically because I wanted to advance media. So most people know about my journalism degree, but I also have a degree in African-American studies. I TA'd these courses in college. It's very near and dear to my heart. And you talk about why I wanted to stay in DC. DC, we also have the Afro newspaper. We have the Washington Informer. I think we have a pretty strong Black media culture here in DC because, of course, we used to be Chocolate City. Not no more, but we're still here. And I'm constantly reminded, every day that one, I'm Black, and second, I'm a woman. There's never a time I haven't been. And I know I'm so particular about my brand. I work my butt off for my brand because I've always had to prove myself. I've always been an underdog. Like you said, we have to prove that we need to be in these spaces, even though usually we're covering athletes and entertainers that look like us. But yet we're told, are you good enough? Have you done this? And it doesn't matter how much experience you have sometimes. They can judge you based off of anything. And it's hard. We need Black media spaces because we can tell the stories. There's conversations, Nick, that me and you can have, right? There's conversations that me and you can have that an athlete might can't have with somebody that doesn't look like me because they're not from a similar background. I had Pennington Green on my show. We talked about the importance of baby hairs, all right? Not everybody can talk about baby hairs. I just give that as an example. It's funny. But it's like, only certain people will probably understand that, right? There's certain cultural things, like what you said earlier, that we can talk about. The issues going on now, I'm sorry, but you do need somebody of color to talk about these issues because you can not only have people that are white talking about racism, because me and you have something called lived experience. Nothing beats lived experience. I don't care how many degrees you have or anything else. Nothing beats lived experience. Black media has always pushed and propelled the narrative. You can go back in history. Black media was always there to tell the stories that sometimes white media or mainstream media would not tell. This has been proven throughout history. This is why they're still there. We're able to tell those different stories, give different viewpoints and perspectives. And some people just trust us, right? You usually trust somebody with a similar background, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's needed for the next generation, Nick. Little kids need this, little boys, little girls need to see people that look like me and you to see I can do it too, because representation matters. Diversity matters. We need to have a voice at the table. So Black media has always mattered. I think people are kind of hopping on more. We see now with this current wave, people are looking at their equity statements, their diversity statements, and saying, hey, you know what? My newsroom isn't so diverse. We don't have this nice shade of brown that me and you are rocking right now, Nick. It's a problem. And so Black media has and always will be important within the history of American history, not even just American history, but global history. Black media needs to be everywhere. I'm talking about UK, Australia, and everywhere else.
Globally, absolutely. Do you honestly see anything changing when it comes to the lack of diversity and improving that diversity? Not just having Black people work for publications that are not Black owned, but even Black owned media outlets getting more access and opportunity.
Yeah, I think this will tell. I think, COVID right now is a hard time to measure it because, right, we're not at many events. But I will say from my personal experience, we're starting to have conversations I never thought I'd have. I've had conversations with coworkers that do not look like me that I never thought I would have. They're asking me, Kelsey, I never asked this, but what can I do to make this right? I'm sorry you feel this way. And, I'll just share, I had a personal conversation where, with my job where I actually was crying as, another coworker that looked like me shared her personal experiences, and me and her are tight. We're cool. So she started sharing her story. I'm not an emotional person at all. So people see me cry, it's usually because I'm laughing, but I had to take myself off the Zoom camera because I wasn't about to have nobody see me cry, but it's because we were having a difficult conversation and it needed to be had. And it brought me closer with my boss and it brought me closer with my coworkers, to a fact that it's a shared space. And now we're discussing how we can make these conversations normal. And for me, that meant a lot because I think as Black women, we're taught to bottle up so many emotions. I'm always watching my tone. I can't come off as this angry Black woman. I'm always having to second guess myself, how I dress and look. We have different body shapes and sizes. How will people judge this? How will people judge that? It's always something I'm thinking about in my mind. And it's that carries a weight on you. We talk about mental health, and a lot of times we don't realize that, but you carry that for your whole life. It's a lot of baggage you're carrying, right? And yet you have to go in these rooms and perform your job at the highest level. So I think I do see change. Again, I think it's slower, and I think it's going to be different for everybody because I can't talk to what's happening in different parts of the country or different news stations. I've had friends that say, Kelsey, it's more the same. My boss, didn't even acknowledge it. But I know for me personally, I think we're slowly but surely going in the right steps. And I'm thankful, to be alive now with social media, because I think also we're able to push the narrative like we never have before. We're able to talk about creating your own narratives. Now we're forced to have these conversations, right? This impacted all of us. So, I think it's moving. I would like it to go faster, but at least I think we're going in the right direction.
Absolutely. I'm hopeful that we'll see improvement. I don't know about change per se, but I think we will see some improvements. Only because you're going up against, mathematically, we're going up against a system that's been in place for over 400 years.
Right. So, since this country started, right? This is what we're fighting about.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think we will see improvements. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope we do see change.
But you both. You have to have hope for something, right? You gotta hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. You need something.
I think we'll have some significant improvements along the way. But as far as change,
Mm-hmm.
As my man Pac once said, change.
Change is hard, but I will say change does not come easy either, right?
No,
Like,
it doesn't.
especially for big change throughout this history, throughout the the history of this country. No major change has came easy. It's not like you snap your fingers and boom, racism is gone. And me and you feel the same as everybody else. It doesn't work like that. Just today, I tweeted out earlier, Robert E. Lee High School here in Springfield, Virginia, finally approved to change their name. Finally. Like, it's things like that. So this is why I'm hopeful that change is coming. Because think about it. We've been so long reminded of this hurtful past all the time. We're fighting. We fought for a Black woman on the $20 bill and it got denied. Like, when will I see a face that looks like mine on the money I spend and the money I make? We just had our first Black president in this country's history, right? And even now we're asking, will there be another one? So I think change is happening. Again, it's slow. But I do think you have to have hope, because I think that's what pushes and propels you. Think about it. If you have no hope, like if you had nothing to look forward to, I think it's hard to do anything, because, you don't think anything's going to happen back to you. And I think we have to make sure that it's not just hope and it's not just a dream, but that it becomes a reality.
You spoke about Robert E. Lee. When I think about that guy, I think about racism. And when I think about racism, I think about NASCAR. And a while back, there was a report that, Bubba Wallace in his garage. There was a noose found in his garage where his car was going to be housed before the night before the race took place. Later on, it was shown that Bubba Wallace and Richard Petty, who owns the Richard Petty Motorsports, who Bubba Wallace drives for, they embraced before the race. There was a bunch of people behind him showing solidarity. If I'm Bubba Wallace, I'm keeping my head on a swivel because I don't know who to trust.
Making sure, right?
Right, yeah. Just because you pull a knife off my back 3 inches don't mean you didn't put it there in the first place. And then you look at what the FBI finding, I like to call the bogus FBI findings that were later brought out, that it was a garage rope. Like, we don't know what the hell a noose is and what a noose looks like when it comes to that. You worked for NASCAR at one point in time. Now, NASCAR has always had a history for decades of racism. It perpetuated the sport, from the fan base to the drivers, how hard it was to have Black drivers even get in before Bubba Wallace, whether you were male or female. Talk a little bit about your experience with NASCAR. And are you surprised at all what has transpired, even though NASCAR claims to be turning over a new leaf and eradicating the Confederate flag?
Yeah, so this put me in just a crazy spot. NASCAR is back in the news. I spoke on a panel for NASCAR, back in New Orleans at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference. So NASCAR is actually really near and dear to my heart, because NASCAR actually is something that helped push and propel my career, because it was something that stood out on my resume. Looking like I look, no one expected me to have NASCAR on my resume, and I grew very close. So I was luckily NASCAR. So I will say this, and I know this about NASCAR. This is my personal experience. I did an internship with NASCAR because I knew in college I needed something to differentiate myself. We talk about the perils and struggles of being Black women in media, or a Black man in media, really just Black in media. I needed something that said, hey, look, she can get the job done. So I wanted to put myself in a challenging environment that people wouldn't expect for someone like me. So NASCAR actually had a NASCAR diversity internship. It started before me. It had been going on. It still goes on to this day. NASCAR also had a drive for diversity, kind of for NASCAR's drivers. So this is actually when I had met Bubba Wallace. This was back in 2013. This is when he was kind of new and fresh on the scene. I posted one of my diversity internship mates posted the picture. We all look so much younger. Bubba Wallace looked so much younger. And essentially this program was because NASCAR knew they had a problem. They knew they needed diversity, and they were trying to reach out to these pockets. And my internship experience with them, I was with the Integrated Marketing Communications, so doing communications and PR. I also had the chance to sit in on Sirius XM NASCAR radio with Chocolate Thunder, who was a white guy, got some radio NASCAR work done. And let me tell you, when I joined NASCAR, I had no experience with NASCAR. I know cars. My family's from down south. I knew cars, but I didn't know NASCAR, right? NASCAR is just a whole different beast. And I learned so much. And it was such a positive experience, because I went down there with preconceived notions, but I got treated so differently. And I'll tell you, even when I was at NASCAR races with fans, people like, oh, watch out for the fans. There was a curiosity. Yes, they came up to me and asked me questions. I was the one Black woman on pit road, me and some of my other NASCAR people. But it was a curiosity that I didn't take for granted. And I actually had people come up and say, I'm glad you're here. And again, this was 2013. So I thought we had been making strides. I've been in NASCAR races since, because of course we're in the DMV area. They come to Virginia. I've been back to races since. And I haven't felt wrong in that spot, But I will tell you, yes, you see the Confederate flags. That's hurtful. Look, I have family from Mississippi. Talk about having to see the Confederate flag. I used to spend my summers in Mississippi and New Orleans. You're constantly reminded of it, right? Like it's sad. It's sad.
Cool. I have family from Jackson and in Greenwood.
I have family from Jackson. We might be related. A family from Bolton and Jackson, Clinton. Look, I can go through Mississippi. We might be related.
Greenwood, Mississippi, how country and backwater it is.
Yes, look.
I've seen that flag. Look. I wanted to burn that flag.
That's what I'm saying. So I know what it means. And of course I saw it at races and I understood why people were like, I'm never going to go to a NASCAR race. My parents even, when I worked for NASCAR, they were proud, but of course they had to defend those questions too. Like, your daughter worked for NASCAR, and they're like, yeah, she's getting her experience. Yeah. And they came down to Charlotte. I was able to give them the experience, and they were able to learn about it. But I say all this to say, NASCAR for a long time they were catering to their base. Okay. That was their base. Those were the fans that bought tickets. To be frank, there were black NASCAR fans. I met black NASCAR fans. Matter of fact, a guy from Mississippi, Cameron, he works for NASCAR now to this day. Okay. He was a black NASCAR fan. And I say all this to say, NASCAR now with Bubba Wallace and his emergence and his rise, I give them props for listening to him when he talked about the Confederate flag. Now, why it just happened, because we know what the Confederate flag stands for, I'm completely against. Like, come on, this is not brand new knowledge. Saying all this to say that, like you said, what we saw with NASCAR and Bubba Wallace and the drivers rallying behind him was, it was a sight that I didn't think I would see in my lifetime. Like, NASCAR was just kind of that sport. You're like, that's what we said. Like, that's just NASCAR. Kind of like we all have that crazy friend. Like, that's just them, right? Like, that's how it was. But now it's like you see black fans for the first time feeling like they can be accepted to NASCAR. My dad calls me the other day, Kelsey, hey, can you get me some Bubba Wallace stuff online? Like, look, I'll give you my card and like, just find me something to wear. I want to represent Bubba Wallace and what he's doing. Right. Mind you, there have been a black driver before Bubba Wallace, if you know your history. But saying all this to say, what Bubba Wallace is doing is instrumental. He stood up for something. And NASCAR coming out against their core fan base and doing that was instrumental, because that's when they're trying to change. Yes, you had a diversity internship program. Yes, you have a Drive for Diversity program. Yes, they've been working to get in these communities. I also volunteered with the NASCAR Foundation when I was there in Charlotte, when I lived in Charlotte. We were in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, a lot of minorities. NASCAR is giving back to these kids and these children. So they have been putting money in to trying to diversify. But I think this is the first time where I can say they've really put their full effort in, like 100% in saying, look, we want to make a change. We hear you. We're listening to you, and we're acting.
You know what? I'm going to, like I said, I've said this on numerous occasions, even publicly. I said, you know what? NASCAR, keep that same energy 6 months from now. Keep that same energy a year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And if I start to see, because right now I'm looking at your actions, I'm not listening to your words. Yeah. Right now you owe it too, because you came out with that bogus FBI report, and then you came out and didn't do what I felt you should have done, which was have a press conference where you have whoever, I don't know if there's a chairman or commissioner, whatever it is, to answer questions from the press. If you're truly trying to denounce something and really trying to take steps forward to extract yourself out of that narrative that was pushed for so many decades, then you should have had a press conference to say, okay, look, we're taking questions. We're going to answer every question that we can take, as we possibly can, to ensure people that this is the steps that we are taking, not just press releases, not just on Twitter or Instagram. I mean, having a verbal conversation with the press and saying, this is the precedent that we're going to take. When I start seeing that and things that follow that, I personally will say, okay, like I support Bubba Wallace, no question. Yeah. And I support what he's done and what he's trying to do with the sport. And it's not the first time he's trying to do this with the sport. Right. He's been trying to advocate. Most people are just getting knowledgeable to him. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, he's been on the scene. He's been a trailblazer. Also, early in my career, I had a chance to interview. This is for everybody knew her, but Brianna Daniels. I did a story on her, the first Black female tire changer. I wrote this story. I interviewed her. She went to an HBCU. NASCAR has a program where they actually try to get pit crew members from HBCUs. I knew about this back in 2013. Yeah, she played sports right up in Virginia. So again, I think I have a different perspective. I think people are just attacking. And again, I think know the full story. I have no problem with anybody going against anything. And luckily, I'm able to just pull from personal knowledge from being a part of it. But NASCAR has been trying. If you look at a lot of their pit crew members, you don't always see them. There's a good amount. We have some diversity in the pit crews. I know you can't usually see them because they're in their outfits. Right. A lot of ex-NFL players or guys that don't make the NFL. Guess where a lot of them try out for? The pit crew thing, no joke. I saw the pit crew combine. It's like an NFL combine. It is hard to be in the pit crew. I'm not in any shape to do it.
But it's a real thing. It's a hard thing. And there are, again, they're trying to diversify. Is it too slow? Yes. Yes. Could they do more? Yes. But I will at least give you something for trying. And again, I was back there in 2013. It's now 2020. But this is the most strides I've seen them make. There was a tweet that Master sent out, and it said, NASCAR has done more, for Bubba Wallace than the NFL did for Colin Kaepernick. That's powerful. That's powerful. And this is why I'm saying I'm not trying to defend NASCAR. I work for different people, but I'm going to be my own person all the time. Because at the end of the day, I'm not just who I work for. I am me. I have to be able to sleep at night. I'm Kelsey Nicole Nelson, right? That's the name I came in this world by. That's the name I will go out of this world by. Sorry, future husband. I'm keeping my name. But saying all that to say, it's like you have to be real and true to yourself. And I think the NFL, because of sports like NASCAR, because of the NBA too, they're looking at themselves and saying, hey, we have a problem. You saw Roger Goodell's. You saw what he said. We got it wrong. We got it wrong. The players are standing up. And, now leagues are forced to look at themselves because they can be in jeopardy and in peril because when your players are not happy, your bottom line is not going to be reached. When people's bottom line is not going to be reached, I hate to say it, but then they will care.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You've educated me on quite a bit when it came to NASCAR because, again, I don't follow NASCAR. I'm from the West Coast. We don't really do NASCAR out here.
Yeah.
We do the 4 major sports, including college football. And, that's pretty much our limitation because it's not in our region. So you definitely educated on me some things I had no idea beforehand. So I appreciate that. And I will definitely continue to look into. That's why I said I'm going to open up and I'm going to watch.
Yeah, because it's good. And you should give it a chance again. When I did the internship, I knew nothing about NASCAR. No joke. They called me. I remember, I'll never forget. I found out I got the internship. I was taking finals at Maryland. And like 3 days before, like, hey, you got the internship. Can you come down to Charlotte? And of course, when I'm in college, I'm like, yeah, I got you. Call my parents like, wait, we got to move you down to Charlotte. I slept on my friend Lauren. I met her at the internship program. I slept on her couch for 3 days when I first started the NASCAR internship till I was able to find a place. And I lived across from UNC Charlotte. But it took me time to find. I mean, it happened so quickly, but that's how bad I wanted to be there, right? That's just the drive, that I have because, I always want to be greater. And I think I'm thankful for NASCAR again, because even now, even though that was back in 2013, I still get so many questions asking about NASCAR because, again, there's not people that look like me usually covering it. And I always give that advice to journalists. You need to be well-versed in all sports, but don't be afraid to step out of your box. NASCAR was me stepping outside of my box. In college, I also wanted to do a PGA Tour internship. I just didn't have time my last semester because I switched majors.
You didn't have time?
I had 27 credits my last semester. I was trying to graduate. I was trying to do 3 internships. Look, it was a long semester. But I always encourage you to step outside the box and do it because someone has to do it. And if we want our voices heard and represented, then we need to step up and make sure we are in those spaces, right? We just can't say, oh, we don't get NASCAR. Well, why don't we get NASCAR? We've actually been a part of NASCAR. If you know the history of car racing too, Black people were involved in that.
Sure.
Just like horse jockey. Most people don't know there was a lot of Black horse jockeys, right? You see the sport now and you're like, wait, but if you know your history, and look, I'm from Maryland. Maryland, we know our horses, right? We know our thoroughbreds. We know our racing. It's a long history of it. And again, this is why we need to be in those spaces. And this is why you need to educate yourself so you can talk on all of these different topics. So again, NASCAR making strides. Is it enough? No. But I give them props for listening because I think now more than ever, we're in this culture where if you're not with social media, when social media calls you out because we have this cancel culture, you're going to be on the wrong side of history. And it just is what it is.
And if not, Black Twitter will tear your ass up.
Black Twitter is the moneymaker. Never forget that. Black Twitter is why Twitter is still around and still popping.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You talked about just the dedication, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for not just your level of professionalism, but the way you're dedicated, the grind, everything that you got.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I'm sure it was not easy. So talk to me a little bit how you were able to navigate your way to Fox Sports Radio and have your own show, and not just having your own show, but being successful at it as well and being a great role model.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, we talked about it. My parents were from down south. I'm not from money. I've always had to grind. I've always had to hustle. If I wanted something, my parents were like, yeah, you can do it. Go get it. So that's how my mindset, has always been. They were hard workers. My parents worked a lot when I was growing up. I had so many mentors because I was always with babysitters. I was with different daycares or whatever. They always made sure I was somewhere where I could be touched by caring adults because they were grinding, trying to pay the bills. And I say that to say, it's always been my mindset. And I knew when I went into journalism and media, luckily, where I went to high school, school was pretty diverse. But I was my high school was the first 4-year graduating class. So I was the first Black yearbook editor-in-chief. I did that for 2 years, my junior and senior year of high school, in a school that was predominantly white, which was major and huge. And I haven't followed now, but I'm hoping they've had more like me since. And I was in the newspaper club. It was like one of a few Black females, writing high school newspaper articles. And I say all that to say, then I went to Maryland. And at Maryland, I actually had started psychology. I had got talked out of journalism. It's not enough money. It's going to be, you're not, it's just a bunch, right? And I'm like, all right. My parents had government jobs. I'm like, they're like, oh, you're not going to get money in it. You're going to go to school. You want to be able to get a job after college. I started psychology, hated it. Enough of Sigmund Freud. Thank you for all he did, but it just was not for me. So I switched to the journalism major at Maryland, and it was home. But, I had to play catch up because I switched into the major, and I still was trying to graduate in 4 years, did 4.5. Shout out to the December grads. But saying all that to say, like, I always, because I knew what I wanted to do in media, because I knew I was playing catch up, switching majors, I immediately got involved in internships. I was interning for the Maryland Athletic Department. I interned for SB Nation, writing for the Tuxedo Times, covering Maryland sports. I interned, it was Comcast Sportsnet Washington, now it's NBC Sports Washington. Interned for them, made these connections, was always networking. Not even just sports shows. I interned for political shows. Look, I'm in DC. I was hosting publicsquare.net. I was hosting different political candidates on a debate show. Like, I just was trying to always pull, because also at Maryland, I got a certificate in public policy. So, I can talk sports, but I can also talk politics. Again, being well-versed. And I think that's also tremendous in sports, because sports touches everything, right? Sports touches politics. And our current president is always tweeting about sports, right? It's good that I'm able to pull the political side and the political realm. And again, being in DC, I think you do need to be versed in more than just sports. And so again, I was just grinding. I did 15 internships in college while also having a college job, because I had to eat. So it's just a grind thing. But the biggest thing I think that helped me was I was networking. And when I interned, I always say, if you're going to intern somewhere, make sure people remember your name, and for a good reason. I was a grinder. And if I was going to do something, I was going to give 110%, and I wanted to be the best at it. And that's why, again, you talk about why I was able to stay in DC. It was because of that. People saw my work ethic, my grind. They knew what I was about. I wasn't just asking for a handout. I'm going to put the work in, and I've always been that way. I finally was able to save up for my first NABJ convention when I was in grad school at Georgetown. That changed my life forever. Even now, I was able now to cover, I can't believe it now, but, I've covered 2 Super Bowls. I've got to do the NBA Finals. Thankful and blessed, but I grinded to be there. It was not given to me. I had to work my tail off. And even now I'm kicking myself in the butt, because I could have went to NBA All-Star. Didn't go because I was still tired from the Super Bowl. And of course now I'm like, man, if I had only known COVID was coming, I would have been in Chicago, right? But at the same time, it's so much. And also, like I said, I've had great mentors, right? Like people that believed and pushed me. But it's because they see the work ethic and the work grind. I always tell people, when I talk with people that want to talk with me about my career, ask for advice, is this what you want to do? Are you willing to give up everything for it? This is my baby. This is my relationship. Like, I treat my job like that. Like, this is what I love to do. This is what I cater to. This is what I'm usually about. Like, this is everything for me. So I think because I knew I was always an underdog as a Black woman, I just always knew I had to prove myself, but I was going to make sure they knew why they got proved wrong by counting me out and not believing in me. And that's always my thing. I'm going to show you who I am. You're going to know why I go by Kelsey Nicole Nelson. You're going to know why I go by my full name, because I'm going to give you all that I have and all that I can to do this job that I love.
Real quick, before we wrap up, I just wanted to get what any new projects that you're working on currently that you have in the works.
Yeah, so I will say my show has been pretty much what I've been working on and living and breathing, because, of course, we have the podcast version. Now we're live streaming. It's crazy, bigger and better. People should definitely tune in. Thursday, July 9th is going to be a big, big day if you're a WWE fan. I have Mayor Jacobs coming on. He used to be Kane, if you guys follow WWE. And then Kurt Angle will also be joining me on July 9th. So, there's just so many big things coming down the pipeline. Out in Cali, out your way, kind of. I have the Buyer joining me Thursday, July 2nd. Of course, he's like the unofficial mascot for the Raiders. So there's just a lot in the pipeline for my show. People should tune in. Definitely, it's going to be a fun time. We're going to ask the tough questions, but we're going to have fun. We're going to laugh. Definitely, please follow. This has been my baby that I've been giving everything to. My team working effortlessly to keep bringing these interviews. So people should definitely check that out. And I will have some new projects dropping that I'm not. But if people follow my website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com, they will be first to know. So
absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You are definitely an inspiration to us all, and I mean that with all sincerity. I'm not just saying that because we here on this platform. But
yeah.
You definitely are one of those that are a person that can definitely be inspirational. So thank you so much. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication.
I appreciate that so much.
And let everybody know where they can continue to follow you on social media.
Sure. Well, first I have to give full disclosure. Please excuse my hair, you guys. The DMV humidity is for real, so we're figuring this out. Social media, it's The Real K Nelson. Twitter and Instagram, The Real K Nelson. Everyone's like, why don't you do your name? My name is common. The Real K Nelson, because I'm the real one. Follow me there on Facebook, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Check me out, my website, kelseynicolenelson.com, and check in with K&N on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. And the live stream is available on YouTube, Periscope, and of course Facebook Live. So people should check it out and tune in. Follow me, tweet me questions, DM me sports questions, anything. I like talking sports, so it'll be a fun one. Thanks again so much for having me, Nick. This was so much fun.
Hey, you know what? The pleasure was all mine. The one and only Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Thank you so much. Make sure you catch her on Fox Sports Radio, and make sure you catch her on all platforms, social media. I'm sure everywhere you want to be, she will already be there. Thank you so much, and we will definitely talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.